When the 23-member crew was taken hostage, the pirates didn't account for Sarah, a quiet woman, 5 feet 4 inches tall, working in the engine room. But Sarah Mitchell had learned to survive in enemy waters for 15 years. And that night, the Somali pirates would discover they were facing a retired Navy tactical officer. Welcome to Storyline Universe. Before we dive into this intense story of courage, strategy, and survival against impossible odds, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories about hidden strength deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. These moments define who we really are. Indian Ocean, 180 nautical miles east of Mogadishu, Somalia. The MV Ocean Guardian cut through the choppy waters at 15 knots, her massive hull steady despite the building swells. At 400 feet long, she was purpose-built for one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet: deep-sea rescue operations in some of the world's most hostile waters. Sarah Mitchell wiped her hands on a shop rag and checked the engine room gauges one more time. Everything green across the board. Both main engines running smooth, generators stable, fuel consumption within normal parameters. After 18 months working as a marine engineer aboard the Guardian, she'd developed an almost sixth sense for the ship's mechanical heartbeat. At 41, Sarah was older than most of the crew, quieter than all of them. While the younger deckhands gathered in the mess hall to play cards and swap stories, she preferred the steady hum of the engine room, where problems had clear solutions and people generally left her alone. The rest of the crew knew the basics. Sarah Mitchell, marine engineer, formerly U.S. Navy. They didn't know she'd spent 15 years as a tactical action officer aboard destroyers and cruisers. They didn't know she'd coordinated naval gunfire support in 3 different theaters of operation. They didn't know she could plot intercept courses, manage weapon systems, and outthink enemy commanders. They just knew she kept the engines running and stayed out of everyone's way, which was exactly how Sarah preferred it. She'd left the Navy 3 years ago, after her husband died in a training accident. The military had offered her advancement, promised her command track, tried to convince her to stay. But after losing David, the idea of making life and death decisions for other people's husbands and wives had become unbearable. So she'd taken her engineering degree, her pension, and her need to be useful, and found work on rescue ships. It was still dangerous, still important work. But when the Ocean Guardian pulled survivors from sinking vessels or provided emergency aid to disabled ships, nobody died because of her decisions. Sarah was replacing a fuel filter when the general alarm sounded throughout the ship. 3 long blasts. Pause. 3 more blasts. All hands to stations. She climbed the narrow ladder from the engine room to the main deck, where Chief Mate Rodriguez was already briefing the crew. Fishing vessel in distress bearing 095, distance 12 nautical miles, Rodriguez announced. Engine fire taking on water, requesting immediate assistance. We're the closest vessel. Captain Hansen, a weathered Norwegian with 30 years of rescue experience, studied the radar screen. How many souls on board? Unknown, sir. Radio contact is intermittent, but we're getting multiple voices. Sarah moved to the back of the group, listening. Something felt wrong. In her Navy days, she'd learned to trust her instincts about radio communications. Distress calls had a certain rhythm, a particular urgency. This one sounded rehearsed. What's their position? Hansen asked. Rodriguez read off coordinates that put the vessel in Somali territorial waters, close to known pirate operating areas. Sarah caught Rodriguez's eye. Chief, What's the vessel's registration? Why does it matter? Rodriguez looked annoyed at the interruption. Just curious about the fishing pattern. Are they local or long range? Local registry, but Rodriguez paused, checking his notes. They're pretty far from usual fishing grounds. Captain Hansen made the decision. We respond. That's what we do. But full precautions. Everyone wears life jackets, maintain radio contact, and keep the engines warm in case we need to move fast. Sarah nodded, but her tactical mind was already running scenarios. If this was a trap, and her gut said it was, the Ocean Guardian was about to sail into a perfect ambush. As the Guardian approached the fishing vessel's reported position, Sarah remained in the engine room, but kept one radio tuned to bridge communications. Through the small porthole, she could see the disabled vessel. A 60-foot fishing boat listing heavily to starboard, smoke rising from the stern. Fishing vessel, this is MV Ocean Guardian responding to your distress call. Captain Hansen's voice crackled over the radio. How many personnel on board? Ocean Guardian, this is fishing vessel Hawo. We have 8 souls. Engine fire spreading. Need immediate evacuation. Sarah frowned. The transmission was clearer now, less static. Usually, radio quality degraded as electronics were damaged by fire or flooding. This was getting better, which meant they were either fixing their equipment or they were getting closer to the Guardian. She moved to the engine room's secondary radar display, a backup system most crew members didn't even know existed. According to the radar, there were multiple contacts in the water around the fishing vessel, small, fast-moving contacts that hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. Sarah grabbed the engine room telephone and dialed the bridge. Captain Hansen, this is Mitchell in the engine room. What is it, Mitchell? Sir, I'm reading multiple small craft approaching from different vectors. Recommend we maintain distance until we can verify the situation. Mitchell, we're rescuers, not paranoids. That vessel has people who need help. Yes, sir, just recommending caution. Sarah hung up and made a decision. She began bringing both main engines to full readiness, not full power, but ready for immediate acceleration. If her suspicions were right, the Guardian would need every knot of speed she could provide. 10 minutes later, the first speedboat opened fire. The sound of automatic weapons fire raked across the Guardian's hull like deadly rain. Sarah felt the ship shudder as bullets struck the superstructure, and the general alarm began wailing throughout the vessel. All hands, this is the bridge. Captain Hansen's voice was tight with controlled panic. We are under attack by hostile forces. Seek cover immediately. This is not a drill. Through the engine room's communication system, Sarah could hear chaos on the bridge, shouting, radio chatter, the distinctive whine of high-powered boat engines approaching from multiple directions. She grabbed her headset and switched to the emergency frequency. Bridge, this is engine room. Engines are at full readiness. What are your orders? Engine room, give me full ahead. We're getting out of here. Sarah's hands moved across the engine controls with muscle memory from 1,000 drills. Both main engines roared to life at maximum power, and the Guardian lurched forward, her massive screws biting deep into the Indian Ocean. But it was too late. The pirates had positioned themselves perfectly. As the Guardian tried to accelerate, 3 speedboats converged on her starboard side, while 2 more cut across her bow, forcing Captain Hansen to reduce speed to avoid collision. Engine room, we're being boarded. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. Multiple hostiles on deck. They're trying to reach the bridge. Sarah could hear gunfire directly above her. Boots running on the deck plating, shouted commands in Somali, and the unmistakable sound of the crew being rounded up. She shut down the engines and activated the emergency lockdown procedures, sealing the engine room from the rest of the ship. The pirates would need significant time and equipment to cut through the reinforced hatches. Time she intended to use. From her sealed position in the engine room, Sarah could monitor most of the ship through the internal communications system. The pirates had moved quickly and professionally. This wasn't some desperate group of fishermen turned to crime. This was an organized military-style operation. Through the bridge radio, she heard the pirate leader speaking accented English. "Ocean Guardian crew, you are now prisoners of the Somali Liberation Navy. Cooperate and you will not be harmed. Resist and you will be killed." Sarah counted voices. 23 crew members, all accounted for and alive. The pirates had herded them into the ship's main mess hall, where they could be easily guarded. But the pirates hadn't found her. She pulled out her personal emergency kit, something every Navy officer carried, though most crew members thought it was just a tool bag. Inside were items that wouldn't look suspicious to casual inspection, but could be invaluable in a crisis situation. Sarah opened her laptop and accessed the Guardian's security system. Most commercial vessels carried minimal surveillance equipment, but rescue ships operated under different regulations. The Guardian had cameras in every common area, motion sensors throughout the hull, and a satellite communication system that couldn't be easily disabled. She could see everything. 12 pirates total, armed with AK-47s, handguns, and what looked like rocket-propelled grenades. They'd positioned guards at key locations: bridge, mess hall, main deck. But they'd made the same mistake most people made about ships. They thought controlling the visible areas meant controlling the vessel. Sarah knew better. Ships with three-dimensional environments with dozens of access routes, service passages, and hidden spaces. And she'd spent 15 years learning how to move through hostile environments without being detected. She opened a secure satellite link and began typing a message to the International Maritime Rescue Coordination Center. But before she could send it, her blood ran cold. The pirate leader was talking about a different plan. "The crew is secured," she heard the pirate leader report over a satellite phone. "Ocean Guardian is ours. Beginning transfer operations now." Transfer operations. This wasn't a standard piracy operation demanding ransom. They were planning to steal the entire ship. Sarah listened more carefully. The pirates were discussing navigation routes, fuel capacity, and safe harbors. They intended to sail the Guardian to a friendly port, probably in Somalia, where she would be stripped of valuable equipment and sold to the highest bidder. The crew would be held for ransom if they were lucky. Killed if they weren't. Sarah had two choices: wait for rescue that might never come, or act. She thought about David, her husband, killed in a training accident that could have been prevented if someone had acted sooner instead of following protocol. She thought about the 23 crew members who were counting on procedures and authorities that might not save them in time. She thought about the 15 years she'd spent learning to fight in exactly these kinds of situations. Sarah Mitchell, Marine engineer, would wait for help. But Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, former Tactical Action Officer, had work to do. Sarah began moving through the ship using maintenance passages and service routes. The Guardian was her ship now. She knew every inch of her layout, every hidden access point, every blind spot in the pirates' coverage. Her first stop was the ship's emergency equipment locker. Most crew members thought it contained life rafts and emergency rations. But rescue ships also carried more specialized equipment: night vision goggles, tactical communications gear, and yes, defensive weapons. The Guardian carried 3 shotguns and a rifle, all legally registered for protection against pirates. Sarah chose the shotgun, less lethal at long range, but devastating in close quarters, and she wouldn't have to worry about overpenetration in the ship's confined spaces. She also grabbed the emergency flare gun, not for signaling, for something much more direct. Moving through the ship's ventilation system, Sarah positioned herself above the mess hall where the crew was being held. 2 guards, both armed, both positioned where they could watch the entrances but not the overhead. She carefully removed a ceiling panel and dropped a small mirror through the gap, angling it to see the room below. 23 crew members sitting on the floor, hands zip-tied behind their backs. Captain Hansen had a cut on his forehead but was alert and calm, keeping the younger crew members from panicking. The guards were talking to each other in Somali, relaxed and confident. They thought the hard part was over. Sarah moved to the next phase of her plan. The ship's electrical system was Sarah's domain, and she used that knowledge strategically. At 0247 hours, she cut power to the mess hall, plunging it into darkness. The guards immediately tensed, shouting to their colleagues. In the confusion, Sarah dropped through the ceiling behind the first guard, striking him with the shotgun butt in a move she'd learned in Navy close-quarters combat training. The second guard spun toward the sound, but Sarah was already moving. A precise strike to his weapon hand sent his rifle clattering across the deck, followed by a chokehold that rendered him unconscious in seconds. "Crew, it's Sarah Mitchell," she called softly in the darkness. "I'm going to get you out of here, but I need everyone to stay calm and follow my instructions exactly." Captain Hansen's voice came back immediately. "Mitchell, how did you—" "Never mind. What's the situation?" 12 hostiles total, 10 still active. I've secured the mess hall, but they'll notice the missing guards soon. We need to move fast." Sarah used a combat knife to cut the crew's restraints, then led them through the maintenance passages to the ship's secure compartment, a reinforced space designed to protect the crew during extreme weather. "Captain, I need you to take command of the crew and keep them safe. I'm going to deal with the remaining pirates." Hansen stared at her in the dim emergency lighting. "Mitchell, you're a Marine engineer." "No, sir. I'm a Navy tactical officer who happens to know how engines work." With the crew secured, Sarah began hunting the remaining pirates systematically. She knew the ship. They didn't. She could move silently through passages they didn't know existed, and she had 15 years of training in exactly this type of operation. The third pirate she encountered was guarding the bridge. Sarah approached through the ventilation system, emerging behind the ship's main navigation console. The guard never saw her coming. The fourth and fifth were patrolling the main deck. Sarah used the ship's crane controls to create a distraction, then picked them off one at a time with the shotgun. By 0330 hours, she'd reduced the pirate force from 12 to 6. But the remaining 6 were the smart ones. They'd figured out someone was hunting them and had taken defensive positions. The pirate leader's voice crackled over the ship's intercom. "Unknown person on this ship. You have killed my men. This will cost you. We will begin executing hostages in 10 minutes unless you surrender." Sarah keyed the bridge communication system. "This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, United States Navy. You are illegally occupying a civilian rescue vessel in international waters. Release your weapons and surrender immediately, or I will continue to eliminate your forces." Silence on the radio for a long moment. Then, "You are one woman against 6 men. You cannot win. Watch me." Sarah's final assault began at 0345 hours. She'd spent the past 15 minutes using the ship's own systems against the pirates, cutting lights, activating alarms, using the public address system to create false audio signatures that drew them into ambush positions. The 6th pirate fell to a flare shot that ignited his ammunition vest. The 7th and 8th were eliminated when Sarah flooded the deck area they were defending, then used the ship's electrical system to deliver a non-lethal but incapacitating shock. That left 3 pirates, including the leader, barricaded in the ship's communications room. Sarah approached directly this time. No stealth, no tricks. She stood in the doorway with her shotgun raised and spoke calmly. "You have 3 seconds to surrender." 1. The pirates raised their weapons. 2. They hesitated, seeing something in her eyes that told them this woman had killed before and would kill again. 3. The pirate leader dropped his weapon. "We surrender." Sarah kept the shotgun trained on them while she called the crew. "Captain Hansen, this is Mitchell. Ship is secure. All hostiles neutralized or captured." 20 minutes later, Captain Hansen stood on the bridge, looking at Sarah with new respect. "Mitchell, I owe you an apology, and probably my life. Just doing my job, sir. Marine engineer my ass. What were you really?" Sarah smiled for the first time in days. "Tom on the USS Roosevelt, USS Gettysburg, and USS Leyte Gulf. 15 years keeping ships safe in hostile waters. Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I came here to fix engines, not fight wars. But sometimes the war finds you anyway." The rescue of MV Ocean Guardian made international headlines. Former Navy officer saves crew from Somali pirates. The story spread across maritime publications, military journals, and national news. Sarah gave one interview to Maritime Security Weekly and refused all others. "I didn't do anything special," she told the reporter. "I just used my training to protect my crewmates. That's what we're supposed to do." But the crew of the Ocean Guardian knew better. They'd seen Sarah move through the ship like a ghost, systematically eliminating trained pirates with the calm precision of someone who'd done this before. Captain Hansen recommended her for the Maritime Bravery Award. The Navy offered to recall her to active duty with a promotion and her choice of assignments. The shipping company offered her command of her own vessel. Sarah declined them all. She went back to work in the engine room, keeping the engines running, staying out of everyone's way. But now when the younger crew members saw her, they didn't see a quiet engineer. They saw exactly what she'd always been, a warrior who'd chosen to serve in a different way, but who still remembered how to fight when fighting was necessary. And in the dangerous waters off Somalia, where rescue ships face constant threats from piracy and violence, having Sarah Mitchell in the engine room was like having a guardian angel who happened to be expert in close-quarters combat. The Ocean Guardian continued her rescue missions, saving lives in some of the world's most dangerous waters. But now her crew sailed with confidence, knowing that if trouble found them again, they had someone aboard who could handle it, not because she wanted to fight, but because she remembered how. Sometimes, the most dangerous person on the ship is the one nobody notices. Sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones who've chosen peace, but haven't forgotten how to wage war. Sarah Mitchell was both. So now I ask you, have you ever been underestimated because of your appearance or role? Have you met someone quiet who surprised everyone when the situation demanded action? Share your stories in the comments, because here at Storyline Universe, we believe that true strength doesn't announce itself. It simply acts when action is needed. And sometimes the person who looks least like a hero is exactly the person you want on your side when everything goes wrong. Thank you for watching. If this story of quiet courage and decisive action inspired you, subscribe to Storyline Universe. We're here to remind you that heroes come in all forms, and the most effective ones are often the ones you least expect. And remember, never underestimate the quiet person in the room. They might be quiet for a very good reason.